Hi, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, and even for those of you who don't. Uh, I'm making this on Thanksgiving early afternoon before we have our Thanksgiving get together later on, late afternoon. And some people have asked me to go into a little bit more detail about the sound quality as far as concerns the new Beatles, the singles collection, the international set of singles that I just devoted the late morning and early afternoon to playing every single disc. There are 23 7-inch records here, and I just got through playing them all chronological order, and I had a great time doing so, by the way. And yeah, so people wanted to know, like, what did you think of the sound? Now, I'm not an audiophile by any means. Okay, I mean, I like good sound, but I don't go crazy. I don't go into details. I don't talk about technical issues and whatnot. I can tell you that the system I'm using right now, I have a Technics turntable from the early 80s and a Technics receiver. And also, the stylus that I'm using is a Ortofon, I think it's called a Concorde. It kind of bends a little like the Concorde airplane. I think that's why they call it that. And the speakers that I'm using, you can't see them from here, but they're actually on the desk here in front of me. Two bookshelf kind of speakers. Not really the greatest system, but good enough to at least get some idea of what I thought of the sound quality here. Before I really get into the sound quality, I'm going to say a few things about just the experience of listening to these 45s. This is, of course, a series where they kind of did a knockoff of the original singles as presented in the UK, as the Beatles with George Martin actually released them. Uh, and therefore, we're going to get just the singles, no album cuts, just the way they were in the UK. And the experience of doing this in and of itself was really magical to me because, even though I love the Beatles and I have a channel that features primarily Beatles, I don't and can't listen to the Beatles every single day. A lot of you know that I've tried listening to the Beatles XM channel, Sirius channel, or Sirius Radio, and it could not really handle it because they play the same catalog Beatles songs over and over again. As great as those songs are, as great as that catalog is, I do not listen to the Beatles every single day. These days, I prefer, if I'm going to listen to some solo tracks because a lot of the more obscure solo cuts are not plus played out. But I still love the Beatles naturally, and it's just that I don't play them all the time. But it makes me think of a story from that I'd like to share with you from a friend of mine, a former friend. I used to know him when we were a lot younger, and we talked about this. And he used to say to me, "How could you play the Beatles so much?" This was when I was about, I don't know, 19, 20, 21, something like that. And I said, "I don't know. I like playing the Beatles." And he said something very wise to me that I never ever forgot. He said, "You should do what I do." He says, "I take a break for a little bit, and then when I go back and play them again, it's more fresh. And I say to myself," he said, "You know something? These guys were really great." And that's exactly what I felt because pulling out all these singles and listening to them was really like a special experience. And having not heard them all together like this in a long time, long for me, meaning a matter of what? Months? I don't know, several months. I don't go a year, but I can go like 5, 6 months, something like that, without playing a lot of the regular catalog albums. Uh, Singles are a special experience because I notice a lot of people also they say, well, I'm not really into singles. They tell me they say I don't like 45s. I like albums, LP cuts. I like to hear whole concise record albums. But the thing about singles to me is like what I like about them is when a single came out, you used to go to the store, of course, before you had downloading and everything, and you had to buy a new single, and you would buy the single, and it was like an event. You had to actually physically go to the store, buy the single, give it your dollar or whatever it was at the time, and then you would take out the record and go home, play it on your turntable, put it on there, and the song was like a special kind of, how do I explain it? Like spotlight, highlight. You would actually spotlight one track, and then you flip it over. Maybe most of us didn't play the B sides, but the Beatles, of course, are exceptions to that. B sides are as good or better than the A sides sometimes. But you know what I mean? You would actually be spotlighting and paying special attention to a song. Um, it's funny. I think when we listen to an album or a collection of songs, or especially these days, which I don't like to do, other people do it. When you download something or you're listening on an iPod or whatever it is, it's not as special. But to go home and say, okay, this is the new single, and I wasn't old enough to buy the Beatles singles when they were new, you know, but other singles that I grew up with in the 1970s and stuff, I go out and buy a single and put it on, and to just take 3 minutes or so to devote to that particular song was like all on its own, nothing else was like a special moment given to that song. You know what I mean? That's as good as I could explain it. Um, it's kind of different, when you're actually going to spotlight a single and give it its due all alone on its own. And with the Beatles, one thing again that hit me from when I started with Love Me Do today and played Love Me Do, the first single, all the way through to Let It Be, and then the Free as a Bird single. The progress of the Beatles. Now, we all know this is nothing new. You're not learning this new from me, and it's certainly nothing new that I'm learning myself. But as I played them, I was like, wow, man, the growth, the way these guys blossomed and established their craft and got better and better and just kept getting more innovative, which we know, that really came very, very much evident and obvious. You could feel it when you just play single by single. Let's just see record to record, single to single, release to release, how these guys changed the world and how they actually matured and changed their styles and experimented and did things, new, different sounds. So that's the first thing that really hit me, and it was such a great experience. Now, having not heard a lot of these songs, in enough time, let enough time go by, stuff hit me, especially doing it this way with the singles. Stuff like some of the songs that come to mind, like "Ticket to Ride." I always say, "Oh, I'm so tired of hearing some of these Beatles songs. I've been listening to them for 50 years or whatever." I say, I get tired of hearing them, but "Ticket to Ride" sounded fresh and new. I haven't enjoyed Ticket to Ride like this in decades. Paperback Rider sounded fantastic, and that's another song I'm kind of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm kind of paperback ridered out, and same thing with Hey Jude. I mean, Hey Jude, when you listen to all the Beatles singles in order and you get to the Hey Jude one in 1968, you really can see why it was their biggest 45 and why it was such a smash. You really get the feeling when you listen to all the records in order, when you get to Hey Jude, that this is really something special. This is something really unique. And Hey Jude is a song, by the way, that I have memories as a child of when that was a new single. I do remember that kind of as a new song everybody was talking about. We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper sounded great. Just certain songs, that hit me very powerfully. Uh, now, somebody asked me, are these mono or are these stereo? They mostly seem to be mono, which is a good thing, I guess. I mean, I'm sure, again, I'm technically I don't really get into stuff like that, but I could tell that we got some of the versions on the singles are what they should be. They did a good job of actually sticking to the right versions. In other words, like Love Me Do, the first one, happens to be the Ringo version, the single version, the way it should be. They didn't put the Andy White version on the single. It shouldn't be, because Ringo originally was on the first single, and Andy White played drums on the album version. That's the more common one that we know, the Andy White version. So I'm glad they stuck with the Ringo version. And stuff like Please Please Me, they used the proper one where I would guess the way you'd say it is John does not make a mistake. There's a version where he kind of like makes a mistake on the audio. That's the stereo version of that one. They stuck with the mono one, the proper single version, where there's no error on it. Uh, so things like that I was grateful for. And so many things sounded really good hearing those versions. Baby You're a Rich Man sounded so good with the mono version, of which I'm pretty sure it was mono. Uh, And you could tell I didn't hear any stereo separation. I didn't hear vocals over there, music over there. So they used the right ones, at least for all the early ones. I'm sure later on, as we get to like something and come together and stuff like that, then you probably have the stereo. But yeah, the mono is where it counts. Where you're supposed to have the mono, they stuck with that, and they used the proper versions of certain songs here and there. Um, so I'm pretty happy with the way Mystery Train strikes again. I'm pretty happy with the way they did that. By the way, I didn't hear. I wasn't able to hear any trains that passed because when I was listening to music. Thank God for that. So that was good. Just concentrated on the songs, and you couldn't hear on the train. But I got some notes here just to help me along with this. Yeah, sound quality, hit and miss. And I told you at the beginning of this video what I have as far as my equipment goes. I don't have state of the art equipment, but I've always thought, to me, to my ears anyway, singles 45s never sounded as good on a turntable as 33 and a third record albums did anyway. I don't know why, but it depends. Some of the older ones from the 1950s always sounded pretty good. But in the case of this collection here, I don't want to put anybody off getting this if you're interested in it, because a lot of people want to know. A lot of the records on this set to me sounded what to my ears. It's just me. This is only subjective, just for me. I'd use the word a little static. I thought I heard a little static on about maybe 3 or 4 songs. And you got to remember, I'm listening to like what was it, like 46? There's 46 songs I listened to. Maybe on 3 songs, maybe 4, there were some pops, snaps, and pops. I mean, right out of the package. That's a lot of times that could be the fault of new vinyl. And I did not, by the way, use a. I have a brush, but I did not dust off the records before playing them. But I would say sometimes, although the sound was pretty good overall, I think it's good sound. You did hear a little bit of surface noise, a little scratch, not scratch. Pretty much every word you say, like I just said, static. Scratch is not the word. Erase that. Static, maybe a little dustiness. You know what I mean? Uh, Slightly crackle. But some of the tracks didn't do that. Like I remember "We Can Work It Out" and "Day Tripper," which I kind of mentioned a little while ago. "We Can Work It Out" and "Day Tripper" sounded really, really strong. "Free as a Bird" and "Real Love" sounded strong. I mean, quality. I'm talking about with that static thing. Some of them didn't sound as much as others. So it's not like whatever the problem was has to do with my player or anything like that, because if that was the case, every one of the 45s would have sounded the same. But some of them sounded better than others, is all I could say. Overall, if you really want this set and you're thinking about getting this set just to have all these really uh, cool picture sleeves to collect them, you know, you should get it if you want it for that, no matter what. I wouldn't let the sound deter you. The sound, as I say, it seems to be a mixed bag to me. I'm not going to say it's fantastic. I'm not going to say it's terrible. Um, but I enjoy playing all 23 records in order, regardless. See, the way, for me personally, the way I look at it is I have these songs, it seems like, dozens and dozens of times over on CDs, on vinyl from all kinds of countries, on cassette tapes, you name it. I have it many times over. If I want to listen to these songs, I'm not just going to put these on. These are backups. These are things that I'm basically collecting just because I really like the designs. Um, this is why I have it, primarily because these are such cool, heavy duty cardboard uh, recreations. You know, so they're really beautiful. Um, but I can tell that once in a while, once in a blue moon, maybe once a year or something, I will probably do what I did today on Thanksgiving. I probably will take out this whole set and play them all through. But I wouldn't say that anybody out there should buy these just to have them just for their collection, like as the only thing they listen to. You know what I mean? Like this should be kind of a supplement in a way. I think the supplemental, a supplemental material, great. as the main core of your Beatles audio listening, I wouldn't say this is the best choice. But your mileage may vary. As I say, I'm not going to give it a thumbs down, and I'm not giving it an enthusiastic thumbs up in the audio department. Take that for what it's worth. Hit and miss, but overall, an enjoyable experience. Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving again. Enjoy your collection.